That has more to do with the kind of the location.
In the development.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but, some trees they can estimate actually, what'll happen in 20 years and
Oh, good.
whether it would shade the system much, so, yeah, that can all kind of be sorted
Super
out.
excited.
Yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks.
What do you play?
Mostly guitar and singing.
Oh yeah, I saw you at the market. That's right.
Yeah, that was our big paying gig for the summer.
Am I right in assuming the home TV will give us or aren't we on TV tonight?
We are, so I'm guessing.
Okay. Maybe we can start then.
Yeah, we can. I think so.
Thank you, Bill.
Glad you brought it up.
This is John Sarver. Let me call the meeting to order. First thing on our agenda is the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. As you know, there's a number of information that's compiled that you have a chance to look at before, so we're kind of agreeing to that all those things, I guess, are fine. But the only thing I would have to mention is that under the new commissioners, we'll be talking about making an appointment to the Land Preservation Advisory Board. The students have to be reappointed on an annual basis, so we'll be talking about that. We had an application from Graham Dietrich. He's not here tonight, so I guess that will be postponed to a future meeting. But are there any other additions to the agenda? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, did you catch that, Leroy?
I'm going to check the rewind.
Okay. This is a man who's learned from experience. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda, just raise your hand. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Our last meeting was a while ago, but does anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, can I have a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your right hand. Okay. Let's see, public remarks. I don't see any of the public here, so I guess we'll proceed.
Can I just mention, if you guys have any suggestions, since this is a new format, if you feel free to let us know if we need to do anything with the mics or. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to new and old business. We had quite a bit of discussion about our goals for this year, and it was included in your packet, but we never actually approved the goals. And so I'd like to get a motion to approve the goals, and then a second, and then, of course, we can have further discussion of the goals.
So I have a question first. The goals in the packet that I was looking at for the food and compost committee, they don't reflect the goals that we had in the latest document that was online.
So those need to be
Those
updated.
need to be updated, yes.
Okay, can we, I assume that you have probably more detailed goals?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, I can pull them up now. I mean, we have quite a few goals in fact. So.
Okay. Would it be easy for you to summarize them, or would it take quite a while?
Leroy, do you?
Well, I was just suggesting if we can come up with a general summary and keep them regular, we can expand on them as we go and have support documents, and they can continue to evolve during the year, but that might be one option. Otherwise, we can include the longer list here. It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I'm fine with summarizing. I'm just not sure I'm prepared to, I need to reference back to our goals, which I can pull up right now if you want me to, or.
Well, maybe in the interest of time, because we can at the next meeting just amend the goals. We can do that at any time, because it'd probably be helpful for Lori to be able to send them out in advance of the next meeting. And then at that time, we can put it on the agenda and discuss it and, I assume approve it. Is there anything in the existing description that's inconsistent with your present goals?
No, there's nothing that's inconsistent. I'd say if I was going to add something that, like I said, I would need to kind of reference, but we definitely have a goal focused on increasing gleaning in the township. So that is one thing that's not called out in here that if we were summarizing, I think should be.
Okay, let's add that in at this time. It's easy enough to do before we actually have a motion. So why don't you kind of tell us the wording for that goal?
Well, we can just go with, yes, increasing,
Gleaning opportunities? or
yeah,
something?
increasing the amount of food that's gleaned within the township.
Okay, so you got that, Lori?
Yep.
Okay, so that is modified to what you've got in front of you. Considering that modification, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the goals for 2022? Or did we already do that?
I will do that. I'll make the motion, but we're still having discussion, right? After that?
Oh, yeah, well, we need a second and then discussion,
Okay.
correct?
Yep. I'll move the goals.
Bill is the second, okay. Discussion about our goals.
Yeah, again, just one thing to possibly add. At the December meeting, I raised the issue of maybe formally incorporating the idea of the township once again participating in the Michigan Green Communities Challenge. And I wonder if we might be able just to add that under other, perhaps, just so it's part of the goals.
Well, in considering you made the motion, you can make that a friendly amendment.
I will so do that.
Other discussion? Okay. Bill?
If I've missed this, please, I missed it. I see it here. Never mind.
Okay. Any other questions and discussion? Courtney?
Quick question. Do we expect to present our goals at the Boards and Commission joint meeting, or should there be an opportunity for me to ask for us to present our goals to the board?
Well, I think in the past, that's been part of that joint meeting of all the boards and commissions. I think that's one of the major purposes of that meeting, which, has that been scheduled, Jim? Do you know?
It has for, I don't know, Lori, I want to say the end of April.
Okay, yeah.
We have a lot of meetings coming up, but I want to say the end of April, so we have some time.
So that will work out, it sounds like.
Okay.
Other questions, issues? It looks like we'll have it on the agenda for the next meeting to talk in more specifics about the food and composting, because I assume that you do want to bring it up at the next meeting to kind of have more specifics in our goal statement.
Well, I would like to compare the specifics with the amended. I don't think we need all of the specifics. I think it's fine to have an overview in here, but I do want to take another comparison at what we had versus what the overview is here.
That sounds good. Okay. Aye. Okay, any further questions, discussion before we take a vote? Okay. All in favor of approving the goals for this coming year, please raise your right hand. Okay. Are there any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, well, let's see. Wetland Educational Campaign. Kendra, do you want to give us an update?
Yes, I will. move this over here, hopefully. Okay, well, I'm going to start by saying we're doing some really exciting things. Let me just take you down memory lane for just a moment. We developed a wetland brochure, which I have some here if folks have not actually seen these in person. So we did this in October of 2020, and I presented it at the Environmental Commission meeting in November of 2020. And then I became on the commission in March of 2021, and then we started this wetland education campaign. And so last year, as you know, we met via Zoom and talked a lot about the wetlands, and Trustee Winzinski got support from the board for us to create this wetland education program, and I'm really pleased. It started out just a few of us with Trustee Winzinski and with Leroy and with Emma Campbell and myself, and then we ended on Brandy from communications, and now we're up to 10 people in our group. And so last year we sent out the wetland brochure to folks that live adjacent or on wetlands in the community, along with the wetland letter explaining the wetland ordinance. And now we've been working on this Build Back the Buffer campaign, where we're trying to looking at not only increasing buffer sizes, looking at stormwater management. And so we're partnering with the Harris Nature Center for their native plant sale to help increase the sales and kind of have a win-win-win, win for the environment, win for the resident, win for the Harris Nature Center. And they have a native plant sale that's going to happen in, the actual date of it is May 7th, but the pre-order is up through that day, so by the end of April. And the class is on March 22nd, and I'm very pleased to say that class is full. And so now we have a waiting list for that. And because that class is full, it will play on home TV for a couple of weeks in April, so that folks can get educated on native plants and how to create friendly gardens in their yard, buffers, and all that kind of stuff. So it's very, very exciting. And I just want to give a shout out to all the folks that are on board with us and helping out. So Trustee Winzinski and Leroy and Emma Campbell and Brandy Yates from Communications and Paige Felice from MSU Extension, and Betty Siegel from Wild Ones, and Rob Welch from Wild Ones, and Bruce Pipers, who's also attends the Green Dialogue and is a wetland enthusiast and part of the vernal pool. So we have, we are having wetland walks every the first Wednesday of the month. In fact, Emma just had one before this meeting today, and we're having lots of folks attend those. I was able to stop by there today, and there was at least 10 people when I stopped by, and when we had them a month ago when the weather was terrible outside, there was, I think we had 14 folks, and it was raining and raining and raining, and even after walking through and her education, the majority of people were asking her questions. So it's just really, really exciting that we're having so much success here. And so I want to thank everyone involved. And I'm as I'm on land preservation and then on here, I'm kind of like trying to coordinate between the board and the commission, and with the board of trustees, and talking with folks from Lake Lansing Advisory Board, and with the Park Commission. And so just trying to bridge the gaps of communication between all these boards and commissions, because we all touch the wetlands, and staff, having multiple staff departments too. So I'm really, really pleased with the progress. And I forgot to mention this. So for the native plant sale too, we're gonna have some sample plant designs that people can do in their yards. And Emma is creating a plant guide that will be available so people can see what plants look like and all of that kind of stuff. And so we're going to be, all that information will be out here shortly. So let me see, what else am I forgetting? We're looking at resending out the wetland letter. And then one thing that's kind of important, and this got brought up at Green Dialogue at one point, is that pesticides, chemicals, we need those to we have to maintain a 20-foot buffer, certainly around wetlands. But any water body, I believe that there's a state law particularly related to the phosphorus that's like 15 feet, if I'm correct about that. So somehow, I was going to ask folks' ideas about how to get that word out. So if anyone has any ideas about that, I would love to hear them. And I'm happy to take any questions or anything I forgot, Leroy or Courtney or anyone else. Yes.
I was going to ask for a couple of those handouts. I think I could do a presentation to like a couple of my science classes at school. And
Fantastic.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Here's our brochure right here.
Thank you.
And then, I want to also show this there's, again, the wetland walks are the first Wednesday of the month. And look at this beautiful flyer that Emma created. So, and she's also doing trail side ecology and vernal pools. Discovery starts in on March 20th too. And yes, fantastic. Yeah, sure.
Well, so I just had an idea. So it's correct that for homeowners that live on wetlands, there's something on their tax documents or like what? So does that go out to everyone, or is that only people that live on wetlands?
Everyone, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, okay. I was just wondering if there was we could include perhaps on something like that, I know that just went out, but include some information also about the ordinances you spoke of, although, I applaud the effort of getting that in, and I wonder if we're not alerting people specifically that they're on wetlands. Is that, well, I guess that's a question for you. Is that an issue? Do people typically know if they're on wetlands or not?
I am guessing that some do and some don't. I think that there's a problem. And that's where the education's kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
And where we had the student, I forgot to mention this earlier about this, the students did go ahead.
Speak right into it. You can just speak right into it.
Oh, okay.
They, had asked us to do that.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Very specific.
Okay. So, the student, Anna, you're saying, the students, did a presentation last year in July of last year, and about all the different kinds of wetlands. So it's very difficult. You know what I mean? Some people are aware of it, and some people are not. And I think the whole point of having this wetland education campaign is to help people understand what they look like, what they are, the purpose that they serve. Like cleaning water and helping with flooding and all of that different kinds of things. But it's unfortunate, with this thing right here, this is pretty. A lot of us know what this means, but a lot of the average homeowner, do they know what this means? I think it's questionable. So that's where hopefully the education can hopefully change that over time. And so.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I was just wondering if it was possible to be more targeted on something like that. And I don't know who might have the answer to that question of if the township knows which residences are in fact on wetlands, could part of that education be alerting folks like, hey, you are on a wetland, and then these ordinances pertain to you because of that.
Right, and that's what the letter that went out in October of last year, the letter along with the brochure went to those folks.
Okay.
So but I do believe that should happen again, this springtime too, in the near future, because who remembers what went out in October of last year? So, but thank you for the question.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the work on this. It's important.
Any other questions, concerns? Alrighty. Thank you.
Well, certainly there's a lot going on. Thank you, Kendra. Okay, moving along to, Leroy, will you give us an update on the green grants?
Well, I will give you the opportunity if you like, or I can give an overview and you can add in. Okay. We received, so far, 5 proposals for green grants. Okemos Library, Okemos Radmore again, Hazlet Community Church, Okemos Public Montessori, and Murmurs from Hazlet High School. They were supposed to meet this week, but they'll be meeting later this week, and so we may get another proposal in from them. But the total of the grants was more than we have been allocated, so our committee, which included Kendra and Courtney and John and I, met and just discussed how we might move forward and provide the maximum amount of support that we can, given the current budget. These projects included pollinator garden, just native gardens. Radmore proposed a campus barnyard, and Okemos Public Montessori is proposing a butterfly garden, all using native plants. So it's much in line with some of our goals from the wetland education campaign, and I think it'll be a good opportunity to promote some of those concepts that Kendra was mentioning as these projects unfold. The notice from Hazlitt High School came in later this afternoon, so we haven't really talked about, as a team, about this potential proposal. But in the discussion I had briefly before the meeting, we thought it would be nice to proceed with our recommendations, totaling $10,000, and then with the hope that if we do get another proposal in, that we might be able to go back to the Board of Trustees and look for additional support for that. I'm not super optimistic, but because there's been, based on my communications, it's been a lack of communication with this group, and I'm hopeful that something will come through, but I would rather proceed with these other projects. We know that there's energy moving forward, there's a plan, and we haven't seen anything yet from Hazlitt. So we wanted to get your feedback and questions. Do you want to add anything to that?
As part of the committee, I would just say that reviewing the applications, they were, again, all in line, like you said, Lorraine, all in line with our goals. We couldn't necessarily fund everybody at 100%, but I feel that we've gotten pretty close and be able to fund all the applicants. And I'm just excited that there's been so many applicants. I mean, it's already increased, twofold since last year. So that's really exciting. To speak to budget about requesting additional funds, certainly willing to do that. Once a budget's approved and appropriated, it is difficult to get additional funds. So we can ask, and maybe there's additional funds. But I think going forward next year, we want to consider maybe asking for more funds up front, given that there's success, and maybe we want to provide some sort of report to the board or report to management that it's been so successful that we would like to, propose additional funds. So that's all I have to add.
Kendra or John, you want to add anything?
It kind of dawns on me that, and we don't know for sure whether Hazlitt will come in with this proposal or how good it will be either. But, if they do come in, certainly, and it's a good proposal, it could be a candidate, if we can't get funding for this year, it could be a candidate for funding for next year's green grants. So, the more time you have to kind of think about and plan something, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because we do want people to get started early this year and kind of, get it done. Those 4 who already submitted obviously have put a lot of thought into that, so they're ready to go, I think.
So I had an additional thought, and I don't know if this would fit in with the green grants or with something else, but for next year, if we're considering additional funding, the food waste group is really interested in doing some work with schools around food waste, whether that be gleaning or composting. So, like I said, I don't know if that could fit within the current green grants or if that could be an additional request to do some grants to schools that are around, around the food aspects and the environmental footprint of our food and our food system and our food waste.
I had a question about, so we were given presentations on the last 2, I guess just 2 of the grants, right? Are those recorded and available on the web or something like that? So those reports can serve as inspiration for future grantees. Okay, I haven't tuned into the details of how that's done. So.
I missed when they made the request, but they did invite us to speak into the microphones so they can be better heard on TV.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, was that heard well enough? I can ask it again if you want.
Jen or Leroy or anyone else, can you remind me when the deadline is or was for submitting those proposals?
We asked for, I think it was February 15th, was a suggested guideline, but not cast in stone, with the idea that we would give priority to those applicants that came in on time. So, yeah.
So I guess, can you explain a little bit more then where Hazlet High School is at this point? Did they submit an initial interest or not? Okay.
Asked them a couple of times. They do have an active climate change club. I presented to them twice, and I get the sense that they're pretty busy just surviving in school.
They meet at 7 a.m.
And they meet at 7 a.m., which is a challenge. Have you been to it? Did you present?
No, because I just feel like the fact that they meet at 7 a.m. indicates that they don't have time after school. That's horrible.
But they have mentioned that there's a courtyard that they would love to do something in. So it's similar to Hazlet Middle School. I think they're right for an opportunity. And I love the idea of spending a little more time planning this year, because summer's almost upon us and school's out. And so offering our support, not necessarily financially, but with some ideas and just getting the momentum going and telling them about funding possibilities for next year might be very encouraging to them. And also put them at ease. They don't have to come up with a full-fledged plan right away.
Cheers in church. I would just speak to Anna in our Hazlet High School. So for me to propose to the board additional funding for next year, which I think is probably our best bet when it comes to Hazlet High School and maybe our food program, to develop, maybe for me, it would be helpful to have an ask, right? So if I'm, present it and have some data behind it on, here's what we've provided in the past, and here's what we're looking at for future types of projects, would we consider this amount? So that would be really helpful for me, given that I think it would be difficult to amend the budget this year, given COVID and a lot of things that have happened. But I think preparing for next year, it'll be here before we know it. So I'm more than willing to make that ask.
Bill?
So I guess our next step is to consider the committee's recommendation. I'm not sure I have a clear idea. I heard that there were more funds requested than available. Does the committee have a specific recommendation for us this evening?
We had come up with Hazlet Community Church suggested $3,000. They had identified about $1,400 match, so their total proposal was about $3,600. Okemos Library had suggested a range of $900 to $1,300 roughly. We suggested $1,000 for the Okemos Library. Okemos Public Montessori, we suggested $3,000 out of, I believe they requested $3,000. And then Radmore requested $3,618. We suggested $3,000, and then our plan was to just make that offer to them and then ask for a revised budget, and then assuming they accept that offer, we proceed with that recommendation, if that makes sense. I can pass around the little spreadsheet and the kind of the scoring system if you'd like to take a look more closely at that.
That's going to be a little bit tricky. So you said some of the applicants have proposed significant matches and others haven't?
Yeah, Hazlet Community Church had a cash match. I believe it was a cash match. A couple of the others had labor match, but it wasn't really quantified specifically that I recall.
Yeah,
One thing to note too is that the two that we're recommending for really full funding were the two that scored the highest. They all scored well, but the two that are being recommended for kind of reduced funding is scored a little lower than the top two. The top two were Okemos Public Montessori and the library.
well, that all sounds quite reasonable. In the interest of transparency, it seems like it would be ideal to have a formal recommendation with some of that information in it, so everybody who's applied understands the requests that were made and the grants that are being offered. And I don't want to slow things down with bureaucratic red tape, but I also want to make sure that we're doing things transparently. Are any of the projects needing to move forward before our next meeting?
I would say it would increase the probability that they would get the projects done this year if we give them the blessing to move on. Part of the thing that held us up and why you didn't see the whole scoring thing in the packet, although I think there was a link to the page in the packet, was that we were hoping to get a final proposal from Hazlitt High School, which they said they would provide by early last week, and they didn't. So we had to kind of assemble informally to make the recommendation before this meeting.
And that link would be in the packet under item 5C?
I don't know if it was actually in there or not.
You know, one way to proceed too is that for two of the grant applicants, we're going to be going, I don't think we've gone back to them yet. We're going to ask them to kind of look at the issue of reduced funding. Does that affect the project at all? So I'm guessing that, I don't think that's been done yet, right, Leroy?
I'm sorry, what did
You haven't gone back to the two about the reduced funding yet, have you?
No.
Yeah, so maybe it might slow things down a little, but we still have that step to do too. So maybe we should go back to those two applicants and say, okay, can you do the project, with the reduced amount, and does it affect any part of the project? And then come back to the full commission at the next meeting and kind of make it official. I think you would be able to communicate with all four grantees that the selection committee has been favorably reviewed all their proposals, and that we will be bringing it to the full environmental commission early next month. And so you can kind of send them a signal, things are looking really good, so things don't slow down.
Yeah.
But then we do, I think what Bill suggested, which is a great idea, is, just kind of make it real clear what the decision was, very transparent. I think that's, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was going to say that it seems like the next step should be to propose to the groups that don't have full funding that they don't have full funding, because it's possible that maybe this year isn't the best time to start those projects. Like, if they aren't able to do the project without full funding, then they don't do the project, then we give full funding to the other group, or something like that. But then maybe next year would be better. And I guess also, I'm not sure what your criteria was, but I think one of the most important things is like sustainability of the project, because I know there are projects at the high school specifically that were started and were really great ideas, but not maintained. So I think another thing maybe to think about, if you haven't already, is which projects have the greatest chance of sustained success, and if they don't have that yet, maybe saying, hey, come back next year until you have a plan for the future.
Very good comments, yeah. Anna?
Well, I was just going to comment. I mean, it sounds like there has been a scoring, and there is a recommendation, at least for full funding for those first
for projects. I mean, I agree with being transparent, but it sounds like a lot of that has been explained of how we got there, and we could put that, we could present that further at the next meeting without, I just hate to slow down, like, if we already have the decision really, and we already have the thinking and the scoring, and all of that has already happened, I hate to slow somebody down 4 weeks.
Kendra?
Well, I think it's a great idea to, be transparent about how we scored, like, and what the criteria was, right? So, and so I think that that's fair, and I think communicating back, so yes, you're looking at your project, and, that, and asking for a little, for example, like, I want to make sure, like, what Audrey was saying is about, like, making sure that these are sustainable, making sure that we're having all native plants, if there's plants being planted, that we're not having any invasives by, error or something. So I think that we can communicate back, and then also it keeps it going. So we'll be at April, I don't know what, first week of April. So if people really want to do the projects, I think they'll continue onward. So those are my thoughts. And, I'm sorry, I want to say one more thing, sorry. But just so that the criteria is clear, like, for example, like we had, what the criteria is, so that for future projects, we're using the same kind of criteria. So people know when they're applying what the criteria looks like too. That might be helpful. We kind of just developed that one this time. I don't think we had to do that last year, unless it was already developed and we used that one. But I think mostly Leroy kind of developed the question, kind of the different criteria, and then we scored it based on that criteria.
Yeah, and the criteria were educational impact, ecological impact, and clarity. And I thought too that pretty much covered the important matters related to the content. Tom?
Yeah, a lot of good comments so far. I just wondered, kind of listening to other commissioners speak, if there's any room for middle ground, if it might be possible to go ahead and approve the 2 that are recommended for full funding, and then have a secondary vote next meeting for the other 2. But I agree with Bill and others that transparency is important. We need to have that information out there. But I just wondered if there was possibly room for middle ground to at least get 2 of them started on their projects.
Courtney?
Thank you, Chair. Just some personal experience. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services, and I issue grants and also receive grants from the federal government, from the state. And within that grant period, we propose or people propose to us, and we can accept, but then we have a negotiation period. So the negotiation period could be, for example, Kendra, you're saying, want to make sure that the plants you're proposing are actually native, or we are going to propose to give you 3,000 as opposed to 3,500. Can you reissue a plan and or a budget that can accommodate that? Excuse me. So I'm wondering, it's kind of similar, I think transparency is really important, and kind of similar to what you're saying, Tom, like that negotiation period could be part of our grant awarding process. So we can say you've been awarded this grant, but we have this negotiation period before we actually appropriate the funds. I'm just throwing that out there. It's worked for us federally and at a state level.
I like that.
Yep.
Well, I can recommend a similar middle ground. Oftentimes when applications come to the Planning Commission, the standard practice is not to formally act at that first consideration of an application, but the Planning Commission will often then take a straw poll to give the applicant and staff a clear sign that the commission, how the commission is feeling about the application as it stands. And that gives the staff an opportunity to interact with the applicant and say, well, these were some concerns and these are some things, but we it looks like everybody's supportive. So that's another option.
Could you make a motion to that effect, to kind of...
Typically, that's not on the basis of a motion. Simply the chair asks for a straw poll. Given what you've heard from staff tonight on the summary of the committee's recommendation, are you inclined to support this this recommendation from the committee? And as long, typically if everybody says yes, then you know that the staff has the green light to go and enter that negotiation phase before you make a final determination.
I would guess, too, that sounds like that sends a strong message to the applicants that, things are looking pretty good and that they could proceed with, some confidence. Well, now some of you have suggested other ways of doing it. We can entertain a motion to, approve two of the two highest scoring proposals. I could get a motion to accept all proposals, but contingent on successful negotiations, or I could just do what Bill suggested, which is just get a sense for what everybody thinks, and then have Leroy go back to the applicants and kind of send a strong message that things are looking good, but we have some negotiations to do. Does anybody want to make a motion? If you don't want to make a motion, I'll do what Bill suggested.
I would make a motion to accept all of them contingent on a negotiation period, successful negotiation.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, discussion. Okay, all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Okay, all opposed to the motion? Do we have any abstentions? Okay, did you record that, Leroy?
Yep.
Okay. It's a good thing we televise these things, right? Okay. Okay. Moving on to the 5-year review of the climate sustainability plan. I had sent out a kind of an idea for how to proceed, and let me just kind of throw that out again. One way is to think about a couple phases. The first phase would be to ask the groups the committees that kind of directly relate to us, the energy team, the green team, the wetland committee, the food to composting committee, the environmental justice committee, to kind of review the plans and then come back to the commission for discussion and then approve what I'd call a first draft. And then after that was done, go out to all the other bodies that should be consulted, the Planning Commission, the Transportation Commission, the Department of Public Works staff, and get their input, okay? Then come back to the commission again and kind of do a final draft, and then, submit it to the Township Board for their review and approval, hopefully. I'll mention a couple other things, and then let's discuss what's kind of a basic process for doing this review. I think it's going to take quite a bit of work, and we want to kind of think about what are the best steps. I would volunteer to be the editor for the different energy sections, but we really need volunteers to edit the other sections, because there'll be comments coming in from different groups. And we need somebody who can kind of take all that information and kind of do some wordsmithing and come up with kind of a draft document that reads well and includes the comments that are considered kind of good comments or things that should be in there. So we need editors for the water section, the transportation section, recycling and waste management, and many other new sections. Okay, so you don't have to, if you know you want to do that, feel free to kind of mention that tonight. But I don't think we'll want to completely rely on Leroy to do all the editing. I think he's agreeing with me. The other thing I'll just throw out too, and then open it up for discussion, is Valerie is, I think, and other people have mentioned having a team of outside experts. Okay. that would be available to assist us. And I think with respect to this climate plan review, I think we should use that kind of process. The person that immediately comes to mind is Susan Maston. If she had the time to ask her to review the water part of the plan. And there may be other people that you know that are kind of experts in their field that might be willing to give it a read and give us feedback. I think that could be very helpful as part of the process. So let me end there and just, there's that phase thing. The other option, of course, is just kind of like at this point, send out the existing plan to all the different groups and say, hey, we need your feedback by June 30th or whatever. So what's the best way to proceed? Bill?
I think you started that off by saying that you had sent something out about the process, and I'm trying to recall that communication. I'm having trouble.
Well, it sent out like a half-page document, which just very briefly outlined what I suggested just now, about doing it in different phases.
I think it was in the January packet.
Yeah. It isn't in the existing packet, because, yeah. It's just a phased approach as opposed to let's just ask everybody to kind of review the plan and give us comments. Because the one, if we ask everybody to do it right from the start, things might go quicker. The other way might be, I don't know, more thoughtful. I don't know. But anyway, whatever. It's just my thinking, kind of brainstorming.
Well, I remember at one point we had talked about like each month we'll take a topic too, right? So are you suggesting that for example, I'd be happy to work on water, and I've been in communication with Susan, so that would be fine. That we each kind of look at our area and then we present it to the group, and then each month we take a topic like we had talked about, or are we talking about two different things?
Well, that was suggested by Bill, I believe, and I think that's a good idea too. As part of the whole process, we could focus in on an area for each meeting, and if the appropriate team, whether it's wetland or energy, had kind of done some preliminary work, that would be good for the discussion. But we can have some just brainstorming by the Environmental Commission too, and that could be very helpful. Thoughts on Tom?
I'm open to any of the above, but I guess I was under the same impression as Kendra, is that we were going to do kind of one area each meeting. So I was kind of under the understanding that we were focusing on the energy section tonight, but if other ideas make more sense, I'm open to that as well. But
Well, see, what I'm suggesting too relates more to how we relate to all the constituencies in the township, because all the boards and commissions and stuff, because when we did the first plan, we did make an effort as much as possible to go out to the different groups to get their feedback, and that was helpful, I think, because it was an opportunity to educate staff and different boards and commissions about what was in the plan. And, even though a lot of them didn't have a lot of feedback, at least there was an opportunity for them to know there's a plan and what's kind of in there. So that's right.
What's the timing of the master plan? And would it make sense to think about piggybacking with that effort at all?
There is not a detailed schedule for the master plan that has been presented. The director of planning has informed Planning Commission that he expects the master plan process to be done internally. In other words, without a consultant in a long process that was followed last time around. And my sense is the township board agrees with that approach. I believe that state law requires that it be updated every 5 years, but isn't super enforced on that, but I think the intention is to get it done in 2022. But I have not heard a deadline within the year to get that done. I do think it makes sense for the two to be coordinated, and in some communities, you wouldn't have a separate master plan, sustainability plan, parks plan, transportation plan. But it also does happen that way, and there are goods and bads on both, I think. So I think we will naturally, by virtue of our liaisons with other boards and commissions, coordinate with them. But I did find your suggestion in the January packet, and I think it makes more sense than the kind of month-by-month thing that I had originally come up with. I think it makes sense for us to have a good idea as a commission of what we would envision seeing in a revised plan before we take it to other boards and commissions, so that we're not just spitballing. We've got an idea of what we'd like to see, and then we're getting feedback on some things. So I think what you've proposed is really reasonable. I like it.
Well, I think that's a good way to proceed. We could put energy, we could put energy on the agenda for the next meeting, unless somebody involved in one of the other areas would like to suggest that topic. I think it's enough has happened in the energy area. It'd be good to brainstorm it, and I think the energy team might come back with some ideas of their own about what should be changed in those sections. So what does everybody think about Bill's idea?
Your idea.
Oh, my, well, okay.
I also would...
Our idea.
I think we're going to increasingly find considerable overlap in these areas, right? If you're thinking about recycling and waste management, and you want to consider organics, once you get into composting and anaerobic digestion, all of a sudden you're bleeding into the energy side. And in many of these, you're going to be connecting with water. So those boundaries are going to be a little bit fluid, but still having some structure to it, so we're not always talking about everything at the same time makes sense.
Well, I've got a question too. The food to composting group, I'm kind of assuming that gets incorporated in the waste management recycling area. Is that correct?
It currently is.
Okay.
We do have an objective on organics.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a little tiny thing.
Yeah, it currently is, and I think most things fit there, but not everything. So that is a discussion. I mean, maybe it's having the waste management and then the food section right after it, so that they, can kind of go into one another, because there are some potential goals and objectives around good food procurement, which is really about more about how the food that is procured within the township has can have a vastly different environmental footprint. That's not about waste management or the kind of the back end of the, or I don't want to say the back end because it's kind of all a circle anyway, but the food waste end of the chain.
So it sounds like most likely we'll have a new section in the plan.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Does anybody have any other ideas of something that we kind of missed first time around with respect to kind of an area? Is there something, I mean, most things fall within those first 4 that we had, but just kind of net?
Well, I guess in a way it falls under the energy category, but there's not, at least I don't see, and maybe I haven't read it carefully enough, but I feel as though it would be useful to have, to be more explicit about emissions that are associated with our community's activities, and maybe even inventory them in some way in the process of talking about energy efficiency. But also, composting, for example, is something that releases methane, and of course methane is 25 times worse than CO2 on a per molecule basis as a greenhouse gas. These are all things to think about. I'm not saying this should be a separate section, but I'm sort of, if we're trying to improve our various behaviors, I guess what I'm asking is how, I would consider that to be one of the important metrics, and I'm not quite sure how to incorporate that in the discussion.
Yeah, that's an excellent issue too. You know, most communities that do these climate action plans or whatever they call it start out by doing a greenhouse gas inventory. And that was discussed by the energy team. And we didn't do it basically because it was too much work. Just to be honest, you know, because we were basically a relatively small group of volunteers with Leroy's help. So, I mean, that's, you know, when the city of Ann Arbor does of course, the city of Ann Arbor's plan was like 130 pages or something, and we used East Lansing because they were 30 as our model, you know. So that, but I mean, you make an excellent point, and you know, if we could find an easy way or some way to do a greenhouse gas inventory, I think that would be. Maybe there's a student at MSU that would like to do a project. I mean, I don't.
There is a possibility.
Bill?
Maybe we might think of the structure of the document slightly differently, so that there are kind of these action areas where we're trying to we have specific objectives we're trying to meet. And there could be another section that's about understanding the impacts of those changes.
Oh, right.
So rather than having within energy, recycling, transportation, what are your greenhouse, that there's another section that says these are the kinds of bigger picture implications in terms of emissions or in terms of social or economic or equity impacts. So we have a all sections environmental justice committee. You could also have an all sections greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, you know, the one thing for us to consider too, and I kind of forget what was in the original plan. I think there was an aspirational goal that would become carbon-free maybe by 2050. I don't know if that made it in the plan or not. You know, so that's something for us to consider as we talk about greenhouse gas inventories. If that's in the plan, do we still like it? How do we phrase that? You know, the governor has basically made a commitment that the state of Michigan will be carbon neutral by 2050. Do we want to make that commitment? Some communities like Ann Arbor, I think, have picked maybe even 2030, certainly 2040. But it, you know, it does have implications for how ambitious we're trying to be, and you know, that's just that's more of a philosophical question than anything. But Anna?
Yes, Bill, I like your idea in terms of the structure. I will admit it's been a little while since I've looked at the climate sustainability plan, but I think it makes a lot of sense to have kind of the impacts, but also setting those broader goals, as you spoke of, Chair, in terms of, you know, maybe our goal is to reduce, you know, greenhouse gas emissions or, you know, to be carbon neutral, but what are these big picture goals? And then recognizing that, like, within all of our sections, they are contributing towards some of these big picture goals, right? Because I think in terms of, like, you know, like we discussed, a lot of the food work is also concerned, you know, reducing food waste. That's all about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, right? So I think a lot, like, probably if we looked at our various sections and what we're saying our objectives are within our sections, they probably all end up fitting into a handful of larger goals for the township. So can we lay those out in front, and then, you know, some education around if we move these metrics, like, you know, what is the impact, you know, what does that mean for our community? I think that could be a really smart way to lay it out, and then also to speak up at the front about how these are intersecting issues. It's, you know, we are presenting them as separate categories, but they really are a part of a whole picture that, you know, that fits together.
Lori, did you have a comment or?
So
someone mentioned student involvement. We may have access to a U of M student, graduate student in, I believe it's April and May, that potentially could be working with us on either wetland education or helping refine our climate sustainability goals, or both. There are going to be a band of several students working with communities around the state. So there's also an effort to network with other communities that are doing similar types of things. So I think we're going to see a lot of other examples like we gleaned from East Lansing and Ann Arbor when we originally developed our plan. We're going to see other examples. We might even collaborate, sharing resources. You know, maybe it makes more sense to do a climate inventory regionally rather than each of us trying to do our own thing. So anyway, I'm just mentioning a couple different factors that might weigh into this.
Okay. Courtney?
I would 100% support that. Just working on board issues generally, we tend to stay siloed. And just recently are we working to work on a regional basis with East Lansing and Lansing and Williamstown Township to make a bigger impact. I feel that on a regional basis that is, with many issues, but specifically with climate sustainability. So I would support that. And how does that look? I'm not sure, but you said that you initially established the sustainability plan based on Ann Arbor's?
We modeled it after East Lansing's, which was 300 pages smaller than Ann Arbor's.
So I'm glad I read ours. Yeah, I would support that. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Luca, did you have a comment?
Well,
Okay. Anna?
So my own, well, probably not my, I'm sure I'll have other comments, but in terms of the greenhouse gas inventory, just something that I want to throw out there for everyone is you consider the various sections that you're working on. I know that because the food section is a new one, we have started talking about it, and some of the objectives or the activities that we have in our section are about getting some of that baseline information. So that is, I mean, even if we don't have a we don't have that, a greenhouse gas inventory prior to the climate plan, we could put in, you know, an objective that says, you know, we would like to, you know, we're committing to investigate opportunities to look at this on a regional basis, you know, so that we know that we want to start talking to our neighbors and identifying how we might get there, and hopefully then we have the greenhouse gas inventory done in the next 5 years, right? So it could be a first step.
And that's a good point, because, you know, we, rather than think in terms we have to do the whole thing, we can do, doing the energy part is actually pretty straightforward. So that's easily done, but doing everything, transportation and food and, you know, everything else, water, it gets obviously more complicated. So maybe, yeah, we should think in terms of whatever we can do, let's do it. Other thoughts, comments?
Question for Leroy. When you were mentioning graduate students, was that part of the Catalyst Communities program?
Yeah, it's connected to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the Lansing area and around the state, around the country, around the world. So there's plenty of kind of resources and exchange of information. But I think, any other further comments? I think we have a general game plan. And I wonder if Ned or Bill, would you be willing to talk to Susan about maybe helping us out? With the water part?
I've already talked to her.
What's that?
I've already talked to Susan. I talked with her last night.
Oh, you, Susan Maston? Okay, specifically about the climate action plan?
Well, not necessarily, but
Yeah,
I'm
I was thinking of asking her to review the water section of the plan and give us some feedback.
No, well, you guys can do that if you'd like to.
You can certainly talk to her.
Okay, then you, okay, super. Anything else before we move on?
So just for clarification, so are we leaving it that each of our individual groups are working on our individual sections?
Yes.
And what's the time frame that we're supposed to have those updated and kind of ready for review by the commission as a whole, and then you want to send it out to others to review too. And then we've got to have it all completed by the time the planning commission looks at it. So it seems like this is pretty tight time frame.
No, well, I don't know. I'm assuming it'll last the whole year.
Okay.
You know, because everybody will be kind of working on different schedules. And so, and I'm not sure, will the planning commission actually look at the plan and kind of review it and provide comments? And because they're so busy with the master plan, is that realistic to think that they're going to kind of digest it and? I say, do you want to think about it between now and April?
I think it depends on the degree to which the sustainability plan is incorporated in the master plan. In the last update of the master plan, for example, the Planning Commission and the Township Board adopted by reference the township's pathway plan, right? Because the board has already approved that, and that then becomes part of the master plan itself. That update also incorporated by reference the old green space plan, but unless I'm mistaken, it didn't incorporate the climate sustainability plan because they were going on at the same time. And it
did. I think it was incorporated by reference by the township board.
I looked earlier and didn't see it, but maybe I missed it. But
Yeah.
if we wanted, the more opportunity the Planning Commission has to review the details of the sustainability plan, the stronger its adoption will be.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, you bring up something which I think is the real world, which is, you know, the planning commissions is an example where they'll kind of go through some sections very quickly because they won't see them as relevant to the business they have to do. And there may be parts of the plan that they kind of focus in on that, hey, you know, what's being proposed here? And that's probably true for Department of Public Works staff and a whole bunch of other people. They'll kind of zero in on things that they consider germane to whatever their activity is or their job. So I guess nobody out there is going to, in detail, review the whole plan, except us, you know.
Well, I guarantee you the planning staff will review every single detail. But the commission may be more selective, yes.
Okay, good. So I don't, you know, I had just suggested that, well, one step to kind of get better clarification on this is, you know, all of the different groups that we're kind of on that relate to the Environmental Commission, why don't you, at your next meeting, bring up the issue of, you know, when would you have time to look at the plan, and, you know, how long would it take? And that would maybe, and then in April, we'll come back and kind of see where everybody's at. Because I know the energy team discussed it, and because we're doing solarized Meridian, it was suggested that we wouldn't even start talking about it till May. And, you know, who knows how many meetings it'll take for us to look at the energy parts. So, you know, I don't think anything real quick is going to happen. And I don't think it has to, actually. I don't, you know, there's no hard and fast deadline that we have to have it done by a certain date. Even the master plan could be approved, and we could be moving along on the climate action plan maybe a little slower. It would be better if it all fits together, but, you know. Courtney?
Sure. Thank you, Bill, for that. That was helpful. I wonder, so we have the master plan happening. I know at the board level and at the planning commission, we're talking about form-based code. We just adopted the new MUPD, so the multi-use code. And then I'm wondering, though, given, like you said, people will be focused on what's germane to them. I know as a board member, I would do that unless I had more information. So I'm wondering if it isn't imperative that we come up with our plan and then present it to, I feel, the planning commission and then the board, just to,
Oh, yeah, okay.
if nothing else, to provide information while people are making decisions, and remind them that we're here, that the Environmental Commission's here, and we're here for a reason, and this is the work we're doing. I say that as a board member and an environmental commissioner, but yeah, I'm wondering if that's not something we want to consider, and that does put some timelines on things to do that.
Yeah, well, and actually, maybe that's what I was suggesting about these phases.
Okay.
That, we'd have a phase one, which is basically us and the different groups that work under us, and then come up with a draft that can be sent out to folks that's,
Subject matter experts or
yeah,
whatever.
obviously, we're still open to suggestions for changes and improvements, but it would be somewhat not a final draft, a semi-final draft.
Yeah.
And I don't, I guess, and I'm just, I guess next meeting we can get feedback from all the groups, what's feasible, but to me, it'd be nice if we could have that final draft, let's say by July 1st. I don't know,
I'm not sure I'm clear, like, who's supposed to be leading each area. Is everyone else clear about who's supposed to be leading each area? Like, are we splitting up the plan, or how are we doing? I'm pretty confused at this point.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, I guess, because, it's not, there's nobody that's, well, okay, how to think about this. Okay, we have an energy team. We have a green team that deals a lot with recycling and waste management. We have a wetlands education committee, but we really don't have a water team per se. So who looks, for example, at the water part of the plan? Who looks at the transportation part of the plan? Because we don't have a transportation team, Eventually, we have a transportation commission to go to. The energy team will look at electric vehicles as part of the transportation part of the plan. So we have some gaps. But then again, we have people like Susan Maston, who's an expert on water. We've got some folks on the commission here who have some experience with alternative transportation. So, there's a lot of individual or group expertise within the Environmental Commission and the groups that work with us.
So do we want to decide then? It sounds like we have some obvious ones for a few of them, but do we want to decide then who's going to do the water and the transportation at this meeting? So I'll say that's my first point. My second point is if we want to draft by July, then we're going to need to do more than one section per meeting, or we won't get through them all
Good point.
in time.
Yep. Well, maybe we won't make it by July 1st, but yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah, I think the green team, the energy team were fairly obvious. We had talked about the transportation commission helping us with transportation, but we never really got a whole lot of input from them other than from Bill, who was on the transportation commission. I think it's logical that the water, the wetland education team handles the water and the green infrastructure, and anybody other experts that we can bring into that. That's pretty much it, I think.
Well, the food team will do the new food section, and then we're also happy to work with the green team on some of we can, on what we're thinking in terms of waste, which will probably go in the food section, but I think coordination will be important.
yeah, and I don't know if the Wetland Education Committee, I mean, you seem like you're focused on something very specific. Is that group interested in taking on kind of the whole water section of the plan, or is that kind of outside of your maybe expertise?
Well, we were looking at, we're talking about stormwater management. We're not flooding, right? So it's not just wetlands. We're looking at stormwater management with all these native plants and all that kind of stuff, and most certainly would love the help of Susan and other folks. But yes, it is not just wetlands. It's looking at stormwater management. And aren't you on stormwater management?
Thank you, Kendra. Yeah, so I am our board liaison for the groundwater management board with Tri-County. So I feel like it would be a good fit for our team, given there's not another team.
Okay.
And of course, pull in some experts like Susan and some others.
Lauren, maybe.
Oh, yeah, Lauren, yes. So, yeah, I feel like it could be a good fit.
It sounds like we've got water covered, we've got energy covered, we've got recycling and waste management covered. Transportation, though, is still kind of, although, yep.
Well, when you say we have recycling covered, are we thinking that the organics is part of recycling, and is that group interested in the broader recycling?
Well, the green team too, yeah. The two groups, yeah,
Okay.
would both be looking at that part of the plans, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I guess that was my question, because I know Anna and Valerie have done some work already in putting some wording down for the food issue, but correct me if I'm wrong, weren't you doing that as part of the existing recycling and waste management section? I'm kind of, no? Totally separate?
I'd say that we've put some words down and some ideas down, but it could go in different sections. My inclination at this point would be to do a section that goes right after the waste section that specifically talks about waste and food, but we could figure that out. But so, like I said earlier, some of it doesn't fit in the waste section, so.
Would folks be comfortable with the Google document and just going at it? I mean, if you've got comments for a section, you can add comments to a section. Anyone, we can kind of open it up to, but with that general sense that the wetland education team will help it with water and with the groundwater experts. The green team and food will work on the waste recycling section. Food team will work on the food section. Energy team. And, but with Google document, we can track who's doing edits too, I believe. We can get started right away.
Yeah, I think we need to define some kind of timeline then. Or at least aspirational timetable, because otherwise, everybody's waiting for everybody else to comment, and I've been through a lot of documents like that.
Well,
I'm sure we all
the other
have.
thing I think which is critical is that we have to identify for each of the sections an individual that's going to take responsibility for being the editor, basically, unless Leroy's volunteering to do all that.
Well, I'm suggesting a Google document where we can all be editors of that shared
Well,
document.
that could work to kind of get you somewhere.
Right, we'll have
but
to have an overall edit.
Somebody has to do the overall kind of editing to kind of make it readable, because some of the comments may conflict with each other, right? So that's, I think, important, yeah.
That approach can be workable at a committee level, but once you make that document available to a quorum, you're going to run into trouble. We can't deliberate as a public body on a Google Doc that's not open to the public. A food composting committee can do that, an energy team, a green team can do that, but we can't as a commission deliberate over a policy that's not, those deliberations are not open to the public. I'm sorry to be a stickler on transparency, but
Oh, no, that, now,
I think that approach can work as long as
Yeah.
it doesn't involve a quorum.
So
Ken?
maybe we have 5 separate Google documents.
Okay. And is there any issue with, you're not a member of the energy team, can you still comment on the energy team section? Does that get,
I think if it's available to a quorum and a quorum is deliberating in a Google Doc, you're
Okay.
on.
so we have to
shaky ground.
have sections for each team that they could, okay. Yeah,
That's why the commission's
yeah,
ordinance language has study groups.
okay.
And study groups are subgroups of the commission that can deliberate. And these study groups that were teams, groups, whatever, are, in my view, ideally composed of people who are not necessarily members of the commission.
Right.
who can participate in those discussions. But we just need to be careful of deliberating as a quorum.
Is there any problem if we have a team or a committee that has a certain number of commissioners? Or isn't that a big deal?
As long as it's not a quorum.
Okay, well, and the quorum is, there's 9 of us, so
Majority of us.
a majority of us. Okay.
Bill, what do you think about, so we have your different commissions working, but we can include all of those commissions, let's say, submittals in a packet that's public, and we could all look at them, John, like as a group. So we can look at, I'd like to see everybody else's work, and so then it would be public. So it'd have to be, like you're saying, a commission level. We all submit to Leroy, here's our recommendations for edits or whatever, and then if we do that in a packet, everybody can review and provide comment at the next meeting, right?
Well, in thinking back about the question of timing, if we take up a topic at each meeting, so we got April, May, June, let's see, April, May, June, July, that kind of takes care of 4 areas. I think that kind of covers us. So maybe we could think in terms of having a draft document that the commission can review all portions in August? Is that, just trying to get a timeline. Anna, did you have a comment?
I did. What was it? I can't remember exactly what it was, but I will say that the food group has, I like these ideas in terms of being transparency, and if we're doing one at a meeting, then perhaps that, we're discussing one, we can have that language in the packet and I'll discuss. And I'll say that the food group has already drafted a lot of ours, so if you want to put us up somewhere, earlier in the month's agenda, just throwing that out there for planning.
Okay, would you like to do April?
Sure.
Okay, good. That's what we'll do. April. We'll do food composting in April, and then and we'll get back from all the different groups. I guess there's suggestions about how quickly they can kind of review their portions and parts and kind of get back to the commission. I'm glad you brought this up, Bill, to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Well, I guess that is the one question in terms of how finalized do we want it to be by the time we're presenting. I mean, I think like the food group, we have an idea of what it all looks like. We certainly don't have like a finalized narrative at this point. Is that?
No, I think it's perfectly appropriate to bring a draft for consideration of the commission and the public and hash it out.
Okay.
You don't want to bring the polished thing that you're going to, die on the hill for.
Right. Not yet.
And I had suggested August for kind of looking at the whole document. If that works out realistically, then you're not, you're coming up with something that you then send out to all the other groups, the Planning Commission and the Transportation Commission, and before that's done, you need to have the whole Environmental Commission look at the final product, which is probably the September meeting. So, it's going to take us a while to really do this the right way. And I don't personally see a problem with us taking our time, but,
On the timeline issue, I do think that it would be better to be early than late, because there's a lot of sort of philosophical shaping of the bigger picture embodied in this, in the very fact that we have a climate plan and so forth. And I think that as the master plan evolves, it would be nice to maybe not have a perfectly polished thing, but something that contains significant substance of what's going to be presented, rather than something that sort of arrives at the last minute and gets patched into the hole that's left for it, so to speak. And I just, my experience, having been at MSU for too long, is if you articulate your position, your goals, and so forth relatively early, they often help to shape the bigger dialogue. And so, anyway, for that reason, I would encourage our trying to be more forward than relaxing too much about it. The trouble is, summer comes and then it's hard to get things done because people get scattered.
Well, I guess then every team should be asking themselves the question, how soon can we get this done?
Exactly.
You know, so the green team and wetlands, all the various teams need to kind of ask themselves that question. You know, that's, like I said, the energy teams was talking about not starting till May. So I guess the next meeting we should discuss, okay, we start in May, can we get done by June or July, or, you know, and move it along? So
Right.
but that's, I know all these groups are involved in lots of activities and
things,
programs, so, you know, it's not like they can stop doing everything and just focus in on this, so, you know.
Well, then the other question I had, which I seem to raise at almost every one of these meetings, is can we cheat and, you know, borrow documents from other towns and cities and communities that we admire? And I mean, we don't really, sometimes well, I don't think we're particularly bad about it, but sometimes people get sort of stuck trying to reinvent the wheel when they really don't have to. Somebody's articulated many of these things very well, and come up with practices, or, you know, et cetera, and there's no reason for us not to reach out as much as we can and learn what we can from other models.
That's what we did the first time.
Sure.
And it worked, you know, because the energy team really didn't have any expertise on water or transportation per se, or recycling, but through the comment process, we got some refinements. And yeah, anybody who's kind of thinking, oh, we need a new area to kind of plug in, the first thing I would do is kind of see what East Lansing has, Ann Arbor, you know, there's probably in the state of Michigan 20 or more climate action plans already that we can borrow from, you know. Maybe more, you know, there's a lot of them. Some of them, though, are pretty big cities that aren't necessarily easy to kind of make relevant to us, but still the language might be good and some of the ideas, so, yeah. I think we have a plan. Other further thoughts or comments, questions?
The state of Michigan had their plan that they came out with, climate sustainability plan too, in the last, 2 months maybe or so?
Yep. The state has a draft plan. They've been asking for comments, and
They did actually extend comments until March 14th, if anyone still wants to comment.
okay, let's move along to Silverleaf development discussion. Who's available to talk about it? I guess Bill, or not? No? Okay. Leroy? Or maybe we'll skip that.
I can talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
The Planning Commission basically approved, was it the special use permit or the?
You volunteered for that.
There's a memo in your packet, which you might have seen. But Brian agreed to take any comments that we have tonight and include them in the recommendations to the developer. You might have seen just past our goals, a little memo from Brian, which he mentions the SUP 2221 was on the agenda for the 28th of February, and that was approved. So really, there was a determination that wetlands were not severely impacted, minimally impacted. That was confirmed by Elise Tripp, our wetland consultant. So we really, as far as the wetland related comments, we really don't have to address those legally. We do have the opportunity, however, to make some comments. And just in familiarizing myself with this project, there's already been hundreds and hundreds of hours of environmental review. There was a 100+ page natural features inventory. There's been a lot of, it's a planned unit development, so it's a little more ecologically friendly than a traditional housing development, just in it's more compact development. There's more open space preservation. There's a lot of effort that went into engineering the stormwater and retaining stormwater on site. So in many cases, it's kind of a model project. 22 acres of the land was devoted towards a land preservation property. In just researching the developer, I was wondering, who is Mayberry? What do they stand for? Are they environmentally friendly? I mean, they are local, based in East Lansing. Their top news story on their website is that they're Energy Star certifying all new housing developments. So, I mean, this is just me trying to make sense of what could we possibly say about this project? What could we offer any useful commentary? And it strikes me that this project has a lot going with it, so we can potentially, lift up some of those qualities that it already has. It also brought about the thought to me that we often come in at the 11th hour on these projects. Projects are already planned out. All the decisions have been made, and what can we really do to stop something? So I think it might be useful for us to have a more in-depth conversation about how we can be more proactive before, the 11th inning or whatever it is, where we can make a few comments, but they really don't have significant impact. The other thing is we potentially could offer some advice to the developer about some of the things that we're already developing through the wetland education team. Here's some native plant suppliers. We strongly encourage you to do some creative landscaping, maybe add some signage to protect the buffer areas or the other historic trees, or if there's other environmental features that should be highlighted. And then we've talked about this at our several of the green dialogues. How do you make a catch basin more eco-friendly and maintainable? And we don't necessarily have an answer to that, but we could engage in conversations with other developers that are trying to do kind of creative things on their properties, and maybe ask them where we can offer our assistance, and then while offering the resources that we are currently developing. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. I was just kind of struggling because Brian told me he couldn't make the meeting tonight, but he has invited further input from us. So I tried to write up something just to get my thoughts on paper. I've got a few other ideas here that some are short-term, some are long-term, but I'll just open it up for Q&A. I probably shouldn't pass this around, but go ahead.
I'm just curious, because I've been attending Environmental Commission meetings since October of 2020. Thank you. And I have yet to see a wetland use permit. And per the code, that's not how it's supposed to go, right? So help me understand, can anyone please help me understand the process? And is this what was supposed to be in the packet? Because I'm seeing that there's an opportunity to review the site plan, but I don't know that I've seen the site plan. I don't see it as part of the packet. So I think it's good questions to be asking about how do these projects, maybe Bill can answer these questions, like the Environmental Commission is supposed to play a role in it, yet we get here, like you're saying, at the 11th inning. So can someone please help me understand?
I'll do my best. When an applicant for a special use permit presents a plan that township staff and the township consultants determine will have an impact on a wetland, then that triggers the requirement for a wetland use permit. In many instances, the applicant, once they're aware that there are wetlands on their property and has those wetlands delimited, they will take efforts to design a plan that doesn't require a wetland use permit. In some cases, that means avoiding any impact at all, and in other cases, that means only creating impacts in a buffer. And in the instance where a plan is presented that presents impacts in a buffer, then the applicant may choose to seek a variance from the zoning ordinance that requires avoiding impacts in a wetland buffer. And that decision is taken to the Zoning Board of Appeals as a variance from the requirement that you not only don't impact a wetland directly, but that you also don't impact the buffer. And it's my understanding that there have been in the last few years more applications for variances from the buffer requirement than there have been for actual wetland use permits. Does that answer your question?
I guess yeah, so it does help. It helps answer the question. So I think that in general, like, it would be helpful, and maybe we can do this through this, wetland education, or just to help help the communication between the different boards and commissions, because I've had a hard time understanding how things end up at ZBA instead of here first. So that's been confusing to me.
I could also add that part of the discussion of SUP 22021, the Bennett Holdings SUP, at the Planning Commission involved consideration of impacts of prior development in the area. And residents suggesting that developments prior to the one currently being proposed may have caused some impacts on drainage. And that the current plan is being developed in a way that not only manages the increased stormwater runoff expected from the development, but also helps address any prior problems. And the Planning Commission, as part of its approval of the SUP, included a condition that no construction on the property is allowed until the Ingham County Drain Commissioner issues drainage and site plan approval. And I believe that's because the Planning Commission believes that the Drain Commissioner's office is being very proactive in trying to solve not only future problems, but any historical problems. And there are native seed mixes planned for all the detention basins.
Roy, with respect to us including any additional comments in the comments that will go very quickly to the developer, do you know when those comments are going to go?
I think if we get something to them by Friday, that would be good.
Okay. So I think we have, I've got two questions, I guess. One is, does anybody have any comments that they would like to include in the comments that would go out, let's say, by Friday? And then there's also Leroy's suggestion, which is, at that time or at any time, really, we can approach the developer and say, we're working on a number of issues and we have some resources, and if it can be helpful to us, we'd love to kind of work with you. Which is, I think, there's no harm in that, to kind of make that offer to the developer, and that could be done this week, next week, whatever.
There may be other developers we may want to bring into that too.
Sure, yeah. But again, let me ask the question, is there any comments that people want to be included in the comments that are going out by Friday? Any? Okay, Yep.
I don't have a comment. I guess I'm just unclear what the purpose of the comments are. It sounds like they've already have a plan and they're moving forward with it.
It's sort of like a courtesy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We've been abreast of this for a while, and we do have the opportunity to make comments. So they're sort of doing us a favor and saying, we'll hold out, and if you've got any comments, we will share those.
Okay.
and hopefully developers pay attention to comments from the township.
Right, right.
Okay, I hear none on that. Yeah,
Well, I guess just to clarify, I kind of skimmed Leroy's one-pager here as others have been talking. So would it be the intent of the Environmental Commission to approve this document to go out by Friday? Is that the goal, or is this strictly a staff-driven issue? Or are we essentially voting on this at this point?
I'm not expecting everyone to read this. I
Okay.
could distribute it electronically, and I'd be willing to streamline this, maybe come up with a few bullets to share if, whatever your preference is. I just had a lot of thoughts, and this is sort of 11th hour spewing. And like John says, some of it, we can always talk to developers, we can always share some and bounce around some of these longer term ideas as far as specific suggestions. I like the idea of maybe articulating some of the things we noticed that were environmentally friendly about the project, and then maybe some of the stuff we've already developed or we are developing through the wetland education team, we could share some of that if it's what you would like to do.
Yeah, it does seem like there are a lot of good comments here, although I don't think the public has had access to this at this point, which goes back to the transparency issue. But yeah, I'm not sure where we go from here with a very quick deadline of Friday.
Yeah.
But my understanding too is since the public is invited to this commission meeting, in a sense, they have access to anything we discuss. Because, it's noticed and, so not that that works in the real world, but I don't think have to be concerned about, once we do things as a commission, we're kind of covered with respect to public input, at least in a formal sense. But I think the more important question is, do we want just Leroy to maybe send out some comments to the developer to kind of indicate, we have some resources? Would the commissioners like to kind of look at what Leroy has written down and make some comments before that goes out? Because I don't think really it's necessarily has to go out by Friday. It can go out next week or whatever. But would you like to kind of review what Leroy has and then kind of make some comments before we sends it out? What's your preference?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the value of communicating with an applicant at this point.
Oh, okay. It sounds like you don't think it serves any useful purpose.
I struggle to understand what purpose it would serve.
Okay.
The idea of thinking about the process that the township undergoes and finding ways that we can have input on the process prior to an approved application makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The ideas of being proactive make a lot of sense. Providing feedback to an applicant whose application has been approved, especially when some of the items, native seed suppliers and such are already part of the approved application.
We're basically too late, at least with respect to this.
Well, and redundant.
Right.
It's already been
Yeah.
approved with that condition, so
Okay.
what's the point? I think it's perhaps better for us to focus our energies on seeing are there aspects of that approved plan that we wish had been different, and seeing how we can amend our ordinance to make sure that those things are different in the future. I mean, if projects are getting approved that we think could be better, then let's amend the rules by which they're approved, rather than trying to take a bite of the apple after left the store.
Anna?
I was just going to agree with that and say that with our limited time that we think through, how do we be proactive? And I think there's ways we can do that, but maybe that's it should be on a table for discussion another meeting.
Yeah, and I think we'll need Bill to give us some advice, because he's obviously familiar with the planning commission processes. At what point can we best have an impact? Earlier the better, it sounds like. So, yeah. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay, moving on to nominations and elections for chair and vice chair. I'm not running for chair again. And you can nominate somebody else, you can nominate yourself. So let me open it up for nominations for chair.
First of all, we should say John has done an incredibly good job.
Thank you.
And secondly, can we twist your arm to go ahead and run again?
No, that's not possible. Well, let me, what? No, I've been chair for a couple years now, I believe, and I'm ready to pass the gavel. I don't know, where's our gavel here? Well, let me throw out a nomination for Kendra for chair.
Thank you, but I will decline. I will nominate Bill McConnell.
Okay. Kendra declines and nominates Bill. Bill, will you accept the nomination?
I'm willing to serve. If there's anybody else who's interested and wants to do it, I would really prefer that someone who hasn't had a chance before take on the role.
Can I ask what all the role involves?
Oh, well, you were chair longer than I was. Well,
you were more recently chair than me.
That's true. I would just, a very simple description, I think, is obviously you're chair of the meetings, okay? And then we have a lot of activity going on with various groups and committees and stuff. And, how active a chair wants to be in the different groups, I think really it's not a mandatory requirement. It's up to the individual with respect to their involvement in our different activities. So, at a minimum, obviously, you're chairing meetings and representing the commission at certain meetings, like we're going to have a meeting of the joint boards and commissions where they report to the Board of Trustees. So the chair attends that meeting, So it can be somewhat focused, or it can be very broad, depending on the individual. I don't know, Bill, why don't you add in something? I'm sure you can elaborate.
I would add to that in practice, the township provides staff to support boards and commissions, and the staff person is really supporting the chair of the commission. So the setting of agendas is the chair's responsibility. They're not necessarily always adopted as the chair has suggested. By ordinance, the chair also has the authority to create study groups and appoint leaders of those study groups. So those are additional responsibilities that fall within the chair's purview. When it comes to whether there's sufficient business to warrant holding a meeting, or whether there are weather conditions that should preclude a meeting, again, responsibility of the chair. And formal communication with other boards and commissions, and particularly with the supervisor, are also part of the chair's responsibility.
So let's see.
There's also a requirement to provide locally grown organic food at every meeting.
Whoops, nobody told me about that one.
Oh, that's a new requirement.
Oh, new requirement, okay. So let's see, I believe you did or didn't accept the nomination. You kind of but then we went to Anna, who seemed to be considering.
Well, let me finish my thought.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea to have the chair of the commission rotate as much as possible without putting someone in the position of responsibility that isn't yet comfortable in it. So if I were to act as chair, my intention would be to have a very active vice chair who could not only chair meetings when I couldn't attend, but also could chair meetings when there are portions of the agenda that I wanted to address substantively and not as chair.
Yep.
And hand the gavel to a co-chair who could run the meetings during those times, and I could participate as a commissioner, and perhaps give that person some opportunity to sit in the seat without always having to be on the spot.
Okay, well, let me, just to clarify, did you accept the nomination?
I'm trying to express my conditions.
Oh, your conditions.
My terms and conditions.
Oh, the conditions,
I
okay.
want a strong co-chair, by goodness.
Okay, well, that will remain, well, that'll be next on the agenda, but first we have to elect a chair. Yep.
No, I would just say that I would be willing to be a co-chair, vice chair kind of thing. I would like the opportunity to.
Oh, okay.
So that would be.
Okay, that would be next on the agenda.
No, meaning like he was talking the
Right.
co-chair situation.
Sure.
That's more
Yeah.
my comfort level.
Yeah, I think Bill's describing something that's not formally co-chairs, but in reality becomes almost co-chairs. Is that an accurate description? Yeah. So, okay, any nominations for chair? Well, Bill, have you had enough discussion and you've kind of, nobody's objecting to your conditions, I don't think. Is anybody objecting to his conditions?
I'll second the nomination.
Okay, well, we don't need a second, but that's fine. That kind of moves the process along. So you accept, I take it, Bill? Okay, good. He shook his head. Okay, any
the
other
record show.
nominations for chair? Okay, all in favor of having Bill be chair, just please raise your right hand. Is anybody opposed? Do we have any abstentions? Okay, moving on to vice chair. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate your continued service because, just before we get into vice chair, how long, you were chair a while back for quite a while, as I recall. Do you remember how many years?
3, 4, 5, I don't know.
Is
I was chair for
is he your
about 5.
historian?
And then it was you.
Anyway, okay.
I second his motion. It was something
You
like that.
can't remember, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, nominations for vice chair. Kendra,
I'd be willing to.
you nominate yourself?
Conditions.
Okay. Other nominations for vice chair?
So Anna, you've been vice chair for this period, so how have you enjoyed that?
I've enjoyed it, and I would be happy to keep doing it, but I'm also happy to turn that over to Kendra, if that's, I mean, not that it's turning over, because we're revoting, but,
Passing the smaller gavel.
yeah.
Do I hear any more nominations for vice chair? Okay, all in favor of Kendra as being elected as vice chair, please raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Well, thank you for both Bill and Kendra for serving, for agreeing to serve. It's appreciated, and I would echo Bill's thought that, I do think the chair and vice chair positions, it's helpful to rotate those around and not have somebody just be chair forever. New commissioner appointment openings, we have a couple items to discuss. One is the appointment of one of us to the Land Preservation Advisory Board, which is presently held by Kendra. And so I guess I would nominate Kendra for that position and ask if you want to continue in that role.
Yes, please.
I think I heard yes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Is there anybody, yep?
I support the nomination.
Oh, you support the nomination, okay. Is there anybody else who has any interest in that appointment? You can arm wrestle Kendra if you desire. Okay. Okay, all in favor of appointing Kendra as our representative to the Land Preservation Advisory Board, please raise your hand. Okay. Now, I don't believe that needs to be approved by the Board of Trustees. Is that correct, Lori?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Yeah, but I think, Courtney, if you could communicate the appointment to the Board of Trustees, I think it would be helpful. And then if I'm in error with respect to that, of course, the board can take it up. And I think, too, it'd be helpful, Roy, for you to send a communication to the clerk, just to make sure that she understands
She'll know.
the appointment.
Yeah, she'll know.
Yeah.
She'll tell us if.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're also need to have appointments for the student positions, because they're for one-year appointments. And I believe, Luca, you're interested in being reappointed?
Yeah, definitely, if you guys would have me.
Oh, but I certainly would like to. Yes.
Did you nominate him already?
No, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kendra.
And any other candidates for the student positions?
I won't be here, so no.
Okay, okay.
Leave it.
All in favor of appointing, or recommending Luca be appointed as our student commissioner? Raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Any abstained? You abstained? Conflict of interest? Well, yep.
That's a
Can I ask a
parent.
question?
No, just kidding.
I would recommend that both Audrey and Luca, if you would do so kindly, help recruit other people.
Yeah, definitely.
How many people do you want?
I think, well, my personal taste is the more the better. How many student positions do we have?
Well, officially, we have 2. However, we have recently had alternates, which I think is a good process. And so that gets students involved in the commission and have some responsibilities. But, it's cleaner if we just have somebody who's appointed. Luca would be appointed. And I'd prefer, too, if we can find somebody from Hazlet, to have somebody from Hazlet be the other appointed student. But you're going to be gone, so are you any interest in being an alternate, or is that you're going to be gone?
I will be like really far away.
Okay, okay, I
So
understand.
no. But I can try and ask people from that I know. And
Oh, super, because we're very open to the idea of having alternates, and hopefully we can recruit somebody from Hazlet, which leads me actually to the issue of Graham Dietrich, who has come before us and asked to be considered as a student commissioner. And I think when this came up before, I think Tom raised the issue of him running for state rep, which I think is a legitimate issue. And as I've just expressed too, I think we should actually, rather than appoint somebody who's a college student, try to get somebody from Hazlet Public Schools. So that's my preference. But what do people think about Graham's interest in being a student commissioner?
I'm not sure if he's actually committed to running as state rep, but I've been contacted by him in that interest. So I think we should probably make sure before considering that he's not running for another public office. My thoughts.
I was just gonna ask when that appointment would be, like, when's the final date gonna be on that? So, like, when we would appoint the next student representative?
Well, I believe they're calendar year appointments, but that can be, obviously, you can resign, we can appoint another individual to replace you, so, that's...
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, so I don't have anybody from Hazlet at the time, but I do, like, as a backup, I do have somebody interested. He's been interested for a good 6 months now. He goes to Okemos and he's in my grade too, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so just as a backup, but yeah, Hazlet schools would probably be be preferred, as, we already had some Okemos reps.
Yeah, we're very interested in having some alternates that can kind of support you and get involved. So,
Definitely.
If they want to be added to the email list, I'd be happy to add any students.
Thank you.
Okay, who is
I'll ask
it?
him about it. Andrew Bickerly.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Bill?
If I'm not mistaken, those positions started off as youth positions, and I understood the role of those to be to invite participation of folks who wouldn't qualify to serve as commissioners.
Ah,
So regardless of student status, it seems to me that if a resident of the township who's qualified to serve as an environmental commissioner wants to serve, well, then let's get them on board as a commissioner. And the only reason we have student youth representatives, members, is to accommodate folks who wouldn't normally serve as commissioners.
but that's a very helpful clarification, and I guess I'm thinking, and I appreciate what you're all thinking too, is that Leroy should communicate to Graham some of the issues that have been raised with respect to him being appointed as a student commissioner, because he specifically asked to be considered to be a student commissioner, right?
He's interested in being on the commission. He didn't specifically say, but he is a student, so he potentially could be eligible as a student commissioner.
Okay. But I think a number of issues have been raised about a college student filling one of those two spots, so.
I guess I would just add to that if he wants to get involved with any of our subcommittees, he's welcome to do that, if that's, assuming everyone's open to that concept. I mean, there's no reason you can't participate in some of the things we're doing and not be an official commissioner.
And I believe Luca's going to need to be appointed by the supervisor. And then,
We actually, he's been appointed chair. He hasn't been sworn in by Clerk Guthrie yet, so
okay,
we'll work on that.
okay, super. Well, we're up to timely environmental topics. Any topics that we'd like to talk about? Okay. I'm not sure, we talked about commission-committee dialogue. I'm not sure what maybe falls under that topic. Leroy, did you have anything specific that you wanted to cover under that?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay. Well, we have as our last item, commissioner and staff news, and let's kind of quickly go around the table and give everybody an opportunity to kind of give us an update. Anna?
Like an update on on the food work we're doing, or what?
Whatever you want to do. You know.
If there's something that wasn't already in the update that has been provided. So the idea of the doing the staff and the commissioner update consent agenda that was Valerie's. It's like we don't have to go through every little piece, but if there's highlights.
Yeah, I think Valerie was very thorough in submitting for the agenda. The only other piece that wasn't on the agenda is we have had some discussions, like I have mentioned earlier, around good food procurement efforts, and are there opportunities for the township to work with institutions that procure more food than, say, townships or cities, in generally do not procure much food on their own, but are there opportunities to incentivize or educate or support township institutions, which would probably primarily be schools, to have more what I'll call good food procurement, which tends to be both environmental sustainability, valued workforce, animal welfare, nutrition, local economy. So, good food is a broad concept, of course, but it crosses over with what we're doing here in terms of the environmental sustainability of the food procured within institutions in the township. So that's another part of the discussions that we've been having lately, that have just started within the food group.
Oh, I pass. I talked
Okay.
I'll pass as well. I think the update covered what the green team in particular has been working on, and Anna covered the food group, so I will pass.
So I was late with my brownfield summary. We did have a brownfield meeting on Thursday, 10 days ago, whatever it is, well, almost 2 weeks ago. And it was the very first in-person meeting in this room that I've been in 2 years. And what did we talk about? We talked about the Okemos Village project. The plan was laid out in substantial detail, but the actual consideration of it by the Brownfield Authority is going to happen in the next meeting. So it's a sort of informational session. And the other thing we did was sign a contract for the consultant to assess that project, and also I guess that's the only project that they were going to be looking at. So it's a funny thing. We have this consultant, Triterra, who for that project and other projects has been the township's consultant, but they are the consultant for the developer on the Pine Village project, which is a whole other thing that's going on, or actually not really going very far right now. Anyway, the plans for building in the Okemos Village, at least at the moment, are articulated as being on the books for sort of fall-ish of 2022, hoping to be done around 2024. As we've seen already, those kinds of things are somewhat unpredictable. So that's where the story is right now. One other comment. We just got solar panels on our house.
The last meeting of the Transportation Commission had as its main item of business consideration of MDOT's plans for the reconstruction of M43 Grand River. And as I've reported previously, MDOT took the request of the Transportation Commission and the Corridor Improvement Authority to include new pedestrian facilities on Grand River in its reconstruction plan. And as presented at the public meeting, that involves pedestrian refuge islands at 3 crossing points, Campus Village apartments just east of the railroad overcrossing, Washington Heights at the top of the hill up by Dusty's and what used to be Merrill Ford, and another in between Meyer and McDonald's. And there has been some concerns raised with especially the third of those in terms of its impact on the use of the center turn lane in that area. The Transportation Commission is seeking ways to make the most protective structure possible. In other words, actually providing some physical protection beyond a curb to pedestrians crossing at those locations. And my understanding of the outcome of that is that if there is sufficient use of the pedestrian refuge islands when they're installed, after they're installed, that there could be a warrant for some signalization of those. Basically a push-button activated signal that would alert drivers that someone is attempting to cross the road at that point. One of those, if you're not familiar, was installed on Hagedorn Road at Shaw Lane. At North Shaw, there's a very busy crossing there, and a rapid flash beacon was installed there and promptly run over. But it's presumably they'll put it back up again.
It's on the
Well, it was not. No, it's in the middle. It was on. It's on its side. I don't know how it got there. It could have been a snowplow. It could have been a big wind. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the train that took out all those power poles, because they went the other way. But yeah, and there was also an update at that meeting about the acquisition of easements for the Lake Lansing to, the MSU to Lake Lansing pathway. And the Public Works Department has been diligently approaching landowners to get the easements required to build that pathway, and it seems like they've made great progress.
Hey, Luca.
I got nothing.
Okay. Courtney.
Just a couple comments. First off, congratulations to Chair McConnell, Vice Chair Grisheshi, and thank you for serving and all of our commissioners. But a couple updates. One is, again, thank you for appointing our Commissioner Grisheshi to Land Pres. I was recently appointed as the board liaison to the Land Preservation Advisory Board as well. So I think it'll be consistent. It'll be good communication. With that being said, I was appointed because we are, let's say, down 2 trustees right now. So right now we have a board of 4. So we have appointed, and for those that don't know, and a lot probably do, but we have appointed our supervisor pro tem, now Supervisor Herring Jackson. So Patricia Herring Jackson is now our appointed supervisor, but that leaves us with 2 trustee positions open. So we have, we're on the search for trustees. The position has been posted and will close Friday, March 4th, March 8th. The committee will review the applications, and we will interview and appoint on March 15th. There's a very small time frame of 45 days for a board to appoint commissioners and/or board members. If not, the county clerk will appoint for those particular positions. So we wanted to make sure we could do that internally as quickly as possible. So this is something that we're working on. With that being said, please apply if you feel willing. And also with that, some of the board liaisons may change once we get new commissioners in. So I'd prefer to keep Environmental Commission and Land Preservation, but you know, we have to share the good ones too. So the only other thing is I already heard back from Director Schmidt, who I asked if would be willing to talk with me about including or just discussions about the environmental sustainability or the climate sustainability plan in relation to the master plan, and he was more than willing. So Chair McConnell, I added you to the email to see if in fact you wanted to be a part of those discussions. So that was good news. That's all I have. So.
Well, just briefly, I think you might have seen the article in the Green Gazette about the event on Saturday. Tom was there, Audrey was there, Bill was there, showing off his worm bin, and it was super cold, but it was very fulfilling. We had a lot of good networking. Let Audrey talk a little bit about what she did there. But it was nice to connect the Earth Club with MSU Recycling, and we kicked off our compost bin sale, and we also got the debut delivery of the Hammond Farms composting receptacles. So thanks you guys for helping out with that and just making it relatively successful. We didn't get a lot of pots and pans, but we got a lot of networking and good vibes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I really enjoyed that event. It was really nice to be in person with a lot of people who are sharing some of the same kind of projects. We sold 2 shirts to Katie, who was our table mate from MSU Upcycling, and it seems like she's doing a lot of cool stuff, and it was really cool to hear about. I'm kind of hoping that we can do some kind of Earth Club event where we have a meeting and we do some of the crafts that she sells or something like that for fun. And then also we're hoping to start modifying the Chiefs logo clothing soon, because after this event on Saturday, we kind of debuted some of our upcycled clothing that we had as donations, but I'm hoping to steer the Sustainable Fashion Committee in the direction of fixing up this stuff. And we're thinking specifically for that of making cat mats out of some of the sweatshirts for animal shelters. And then also we have a tree planting event that I will email more information about, because I need to promote it because it needs some more promotion. It's a fine idea, but it just needs more promotion. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Just briefly, I didn't say, John did a great job on at the Green Dialogue this morning. There's a recording of his presentation on Solarize Meridian. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I wanted to just tell folks that recording is available. And today we also did a walkthrough with solar contractors for our next solar system array on the carports, hopefully at the Public Safety Building. And tomorrow we're having a conversation about our recycling center with bring Dan up to speed and meet with Trevor and some folks from some potential consultants that have been helping with revisions at the recycling center. So.
Yeah, I did a Solarize Meridian host orientation on Monday evening, and that was recorded, and so I've already sent the link to Bill, because he had somebody in his neighborhood who might consider being a meeting host. And so if any of you know of somebody, or maybe yourself, Courtney's going to be a meeting host, that orientation's available for you or people you know. And then after they look at the video, which is about an hour, I could set up a one-on-one with them to answer any questions that they have. Because at the present time, we have 8 meetings planned. The first one, March 21st, which I'll do virtually. And then we have some in-person meetings and other virtual meetings planned in April, and we'll probably continue through the year. So I think with Solarize Meridian, which is, the kind of a meeting to inform your neighbors about solar energy and what's involved, and also be eligible for a group discount, I think we're off to a good start. So we'll kind of see. And that's it for me. And let's see, anything other or public remarks before we adjourn? Okay, hearing nothing, can I get a motion to adjourn? Kendra, second by Ned. All in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand. Okay, any opposed?
Thank you so much, John.
Oh, my, yeah, happy to.